There's a lot of going on in the world, dark stuff people are scrolling past, and I hope to be like one little moment of light. I was 8 years old when I started acting professionally. So much auditioning and not get it. That's just part of the gig. It's a numbers game.
Wow.
It probably added to my anxiety quite a bit. Fortnite was licensing my dance to become an emote on the game, and that was the first money I made on social media. I do not care if people are watching me on their phones or if they're watching me in the movie theater. Man, really, you're getting some secrets here. It's not stuff I tell people.
Over 150 million people watch Adam Rose every month for his comedic sketches and reactions. He started in Hollywood as a child actor. At age 9, he played the son of Robin Williams. He grew up with a disease that kept him from playing with other kids and felt left out. He learned to channel that passion and determination into a successful career as a Hollywood actor, as someone who just sold and is producing his own Hollywood movie, and is a top social media star. This pod is sponsored by me. I help build this cool new tool, Karat Insights. If you're a creator, Karat helps you manage your financials and compare how you're doing against peers. More on this later, and link in description below. Adam Rose.
Yeah.
Is that your real name? I feel it's such a good name. It could be a stage name.
It is a stage name.
This whole time.
The whole time? The whole time? The whole time?
At what point did you pick up Adam Rose as the stage name?
When I was 8 years old, when I started acting professionally.
Child actor.
Yeah. You know, I have an Israeli last name, Hebrew. And at the time this was true, you know, you go to auditions, they wouldn't be able to pronounce my name. You want something simple. A lot of the characters at the time were written for like all American boys and stuff. So it was suggested to kind of have a more neutral sounding last name.
When you say suggested,
yeah,
how much were you down to take on the stage name as well?
I didn't really care. I think for me, it was, I was down to do whatever I needed to do to get to go on auditions and perform.
What motivates an 8-year-old to say, I'm going to make this audition, even if I need to change my name?
I really would have done anything at that point. I was also pretty short for my age. I didn't have a lot of friends in elementary school. Around the same time I started acting, I got diagnosed with a disease called Gaucher's disease. And that sort of stunted my growth a little bit at the time before I started getting the medicine for it. And it also made it so that I couldn't do a lot of the same activities that the other kids were doing, you know, playing at recess, going on school trips, stuff like that. And so I think I always just felt a little bit different from everybody else because of that. And then once I started acting professionally, then it sort of solidified that feeling of like, oh, I'm on a different path than everybody else is. And you sort of have to have a little bit of, you know, delusion to believe that you can make it in any creative field, I think. And I think I've had that since I was a child.
Yeah, it's this concept around, wow, maybe I can be special. Clearly, I'm different, but maybe different can be good.
Yeah, I learned that really early on, basically, that your differences can be your strengths.
I remember watching a short you created where you were speaking with your 8-year-old self.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it was on Crochet, if I pronounced that correctly.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, where he was asking you, hey, like, is it going to be cured by the time you're you? And you were like, no. And yeah, this really beautiful conversation where it was like, well, the disease is not gone, but you have still lived an incredibly full life despite it.
Oh, yeah. And like maybe because of it. You
Mm.
know what I mean? Not just despite it, but because of it.
What do you mean because of it?
Not being able to do all that stuff with people who I went to school with,
like
or my peers, sports and all
football.
that stuff. It forced me to figure out how to entertain myself, you know, and when I was alone in my room, you know, making faces in the mirror or dancing or singing or doing monologues or watching and just consuming a ton of TV and film.
Yeah.
I was, you know, on a mission to kind of live a life, even though I couldn't do all of these other things that everybody else was doing.
What was your first role in Hollywood?
My very first role was, which is crazy, was a movie called Deconstructing Harry, where I played Robin Williams' son.
That's a role to start Hollywood off with.
Yeah. And that movie got nominated for an Oscar too.
That's a very unusual childhood. And having Robin Williams, having him as your dad.
Yeah.
Were there ever points as a kid where you were like, I could do this for the rest of my life? Or was it like, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get out?
Oh, no. I think especially that being my first experience, I was already such a huge Robin Williams fan.
Yeah.
And it was so surreal showing up on set and going to the makeup and hair trailer and, you know, seeing him there and introducing himself. And then all of a sudden we're working together and we're on set. And he couldn't have been nicer.
Wow.
Or more warm. I mean, he was so welcoming and just such like, it was just an amazing first experience on set. So I think I was hooked. I was like, oh, this is what acting's like, which it is not like that all the time, obviously.
Yeah.
But that was a good enough taste that I was like, oh yeah, I could do this forever.
And now it's been, let's see, what, over 25 years?
Yeah.
Over 30 television shows,
That's
films.
Right. Yep.
You recently also sold your own movie.
Yeah.
That you were writing, directing, starring in.
Yeah.
How the f do you sell a movie in Hollywood?
I pitched this movie to a company a while back, and they really liked the idea. Basically, the tactic ended up becoming, hey, let's make like a little presentation. You know, let's put a little bit of money into it and just make like a 3-minute presentation of this movie. So sort of like a trailer of a movie that doesn't exist. And we did that. And then it didn't end up working out with the first company that I was potentially partnering with. And then I sent that trailer out to a few people and there was a lot of interest. And I went with a company that was down to let me direct and star in it.
Are you allowed to share what the premise was yet, or is that still under wraps?
The premise is under wraps, but I can say that it takes place in the world of social media.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a comedy.
You're best known for Blue Cardigan,
Yep.
which has now developed into the entire Adam Rose cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Reactions and
Yeah.
comedy. And on your channel, you've done also interviews yourself.
Yeah.
When you start to see this take off, I mean, I imagine landing your first roles in your first movie, your first series regular, moving to Hollywood, huge. What did it feel like when you wake up one day and you're like, oh, like I'm doing this. Social media, it's working. I have millions of followers.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a lot of pinch me moments for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime I'm at my studio and me and my team are about to shoot some stuff and I put on the cardigan and we get to it, it's surreal. I'm like, I cannot believe that this is my job and I get to do this and in a very, in a, albeit ridiculous but serious way.
Yeah.
But I remember, you know, going viral for the first time. I remember making my first dollar on social media. It was like,
wow,
it's such an enormous feeling of autonomy that you can't get in many other places, but you really feel like you have, you know, it's you, it's your hands, you know, molding the clay. And then when people receive it, and it's received on such a large scale and something gets millions of views or tens of millions of views, it's
like you didn't have to submit a self-tape. You just went and did it.
Yeah. I don't have to go audition for the jobs anymore. The jobs come to me now, which is nice. Yeah.
You said you remember when you made your first dollar. What was it? Was it a brand deal?
The first time I went viral was...
If you're a creator, Karat just launched this new insights tool that analyzes your socials and financials to calculate how much you're making today and how much more you could be making. You can compare your earnings to that of other creators like you and see on average how much they make and how they're making it, whether it's AdSense, brand deals, merch, or courses. For this channel, I learned compared to other podcasters of similar size, I'm lagging behind in growth rate and brand deal earnings, so I know how to improve. Try it for free via link in description below because Karat's mission is to help handle the business side of being a creator. Now back to the podcast. You said you remember when you made your first dollar. What was it? Was it a brand deal?
The first time I went viral
Yeah.
was a parody dance on TikTok called the Alternative Woe Challenge. The flow, the crow, the no. And that video did 1 million views by 8 p.m. that night. Blew up. Tens of thousands of people were doing the dance around the world. I got a call from my manager, who was just my acting manager at the time.
Theatrical, yeah.
Theatrical. And he hit me up and he was like, hey, some gaming company hit us up and they want to license one of your dances. And I was like, what? And then when I got the contract, I found out it was Epic Games and Fortnite was licensing my dance to become an emote on the game. And that was the first money I made on social media.
What a way to come into this world. It's like, oh yeah, some video game company reached out to my agent.
Little did I know it was the biggest video game.
Like, oh yeah, we want to put you in Fortnite. I thought, Adam, when I said, oh, go ahead.
I didn't even know what Fortnite was.
That makes it even better.
I know. I knew it was a game, and that was pretty much all I knew.
I thought when you said you made your first dollar, I thought it was going to be like, oh, like Raid Shadow Legends is like, here, I'll flip you $1,000. Like, keep doing what you're doing. You're like, oh no, it was Epic Gaming. It was Fortnite.
And then everything just snowballed after that.
What was your agent's reaction? Were they just like, what? Like,
I don't think they knew what it was either.
So they're just like, oh, this is interesting. I guess they want to pay you money.
All right, I guess we make a little money on this, and yeah, and then when it came out, my social media just like blew up. I mean, it already had been growing fairly consistently, but this whole other audience became aware of who I was because this huge gaming audience, which is enormous, and they started flooding my social media because Fortnite posted on Instagram and on Twitter and everywhere the little character doing my dance and tagged me.
Wow.
And so I woke up and it was just everywhere. It started this chapter where I was gaming for a little bit because I wanted to use my own emote.
Oh, so you got into Fortnite.
I did, yeah.
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 To play as your own character.
To just play.
And
to
do
be
the
able
emote.
and you hear my voice and everything. It's crazy.
What's the dream now for the social media piece, especially relative to your work as an actor? How do you think, is one more important for you now? You focus more on one over the other?
No, I think what we're seeing, especially, we're now kind of moving on from the strikes, and there's a lot of change happening in our industry in the Hollywood side. And I think you saw so many people from the traditional side of things move over to social over the last couple of years. Maybe not fully move over, but really embrace social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube in a much bigger way. And I just think we're going to see more and more of those two worlds going like this and really blurring the line between the two of them. In a similar way that Netflix did when, and all the other streaming platforms came out and people were like, is this different than TV? Is it TV? Like,
is it a tech company?
Right,
Like, do they get Hollywood?
Is it the same thing? Are they different are they, should it be a different category?
Like, should I have a little Netflix side gig?
That's what I mean. And so like, I think we're going to see a lot of that happening on TikTok, on Instagram, where we're going to see people from traditional coming over and maybe making content over here. We're going to see people from digital making content in traditional, which we're already seeing a fair amount of this. Right. And I hope to be on the forefront of blurring that line.
You absolutely are. As you said, many traditional stars have dabbled, but none have taken it. That's why I asked that question, because you have this long storied history and body of work on the acting side.
Yeah.
And I know you primarily as a social media creator, and you make a lot of content. That's also a big part of your identity now.
If I get to write something or direct something, star in it, make it, put it out there for people, I'm a very happy man.
Yeah.
I do not care. I really, there was a time when I cared, but today I do not care if people are watching me on their phones or if they're watching me on Netflix or if they're watching me in the movie theater. I want all of those things, but I do not prefer one over the other because the amount of people that I reach a month just through Instagram exceeds the amount of people I would reach through any other medium combined. This month, I've reached over 160 million unique accounts on Instagram. I don't know the last movie, TV show, or whatever that 160 million people watch.
The entire population of the United States is only around 320 million.
That's right.
It's a number so mind-bogglingly large. It's hard just to comprehend.
I know.
When did that change? You said it wasn't always that appreciation for, it doesn't matter what format, what medium. When did that begin to be different for you?
There wasn't like one moment that really was a turning point, but I think between the pandemic and the strikes, those two consecutive events reframed what it is I really want to do. You know, for a long time, it just felt like I want to star on a series. I want to make and star in movies, which I would still love to do. Don't get me wrong. But what is more important to me is to be able, again, to perform, make things, and put them out for people, and let people.
I love that.
And make people laugh. You know what I mean? There's a lot of crap going on in the world. There's a lot of dark stuff people are scrolling past constantly on social media, and I hope to be like one little moment of light for people, whether that's in a funny little 15-second video or it's on a half-hour series on Netflix, or, you know, hopefully next year it will be an hour-and-a-half movie that they put on and watch for a little bit and take a break from everything.
When you think back at your own life, when are the moments where you felt most passionate?
Life as a creative, you get so many ups and downs. So you get high highs and low lows. And, you know, booking my first series regular and getting to go do that show, that Netflix show was...
What was the show?
It was called Mary Happy Whatever. Starred Dennis Quaid and Ashley Tisdale, who's now my good friend. And we ended up doing a couple shows together. But just doing stuff like that, getting to work with people who became family, those are high highs.
Yeah.
And then the low lows are, you know, when the show gets canceled and you don't know when you're going to get your next job. Or, you know, the many times that I came unbelievably close to booking dream jobs.
Wow.
Big movies or starring roles in a big national series. Those moments can be heartbreaking. It's just part of the game.
It's
part
the
of the
price
deal.
you pay for getting able to do this.
Yeah, exactly. You get to do incredible things and you also get to get crushed every so often. It's an underdog story.
Yeah.
Everybody loves it. And you, I think, innately put yourself in that underdog position and you're like, I'll show them.
I feel so many people I've now met in the creative sphere. We all had a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Oh God, people don't like me.
Yeah, of
I'd
course.
like to be liked.
I don't think it's just people in the creative space. I think the people in the creative space are probably more in tune with those feelings. You know what I mean? They're probably more sensitive to those feelings, but everybody feels like an outsider sometimes. I think creative people just go, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? You know, how am I going to use this? How am I going to, you know, lean into this feeling or this, you know, this separation and show everybody what I can do.
The previous times I've met you, didn't know about your background, but I always remember you being so adroitly charming and seemingly effortlessly funny.
That's so nice to say.
And I remember thinking, you're so good at being funny. You had to work for this.
Dude, thank you. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, you're incorrect. I just look this way. That's just how
natural
my face
good
looks.
Genes. And I remember thinking that to be that funny, you had to really want it. And I listened to you describing yourself as a kid in school, sitting there alone in the mirror, making faces with what God gave you at yourself. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You learned how to be likable.
I think that's part of it. I don't know about likable, but maybe like I learned to make funny faces. That was like
Step one.
step one. Yeah. And I did learn early on that making people laugh is a superpower. And you might not be able to learn it. That might be something that's like in people.
Yeah, the timing
And stuff. That's just like, I don't know if you can teach people that. And I think I've had that even when I was a kid, because I remember being a kid and being able to make people laugh and grown-ups laugh. Like I would be able to stay up a little bit later when my parents had guests over because I could kind of sneak out into the living room and do a little bit or
you'd entertain
them. And if they laughed, I would be able to kind of like stick around for a little longer because I hated going to bed.
Yeah.
And so many aspects of my life included, trying to adjust to it or trying to navigate it through comedy and humor.
Now, given your newfound popularity and status, were you a goody two-shoes or a little bit more on the rebellious side?
Oh, I was a delinquent in high school.
What does that mean? Like, what were you doing?
I'm trying to decide how much I want to get into this.
The real Adam Rose.
Yeah. It was art school. So we were, dabbling in everything and cutting class and stealing things and getting picked up by truancy and just, we were, I think that was sort of how we got our kicks, was doing bad stuff.
Was there like a gang? Were you in a gang?
I wasn't in a gang, but I was friends with people who were in gangs. Yeah.
Are these like I will shank you gangs? Are these like the Sharks and the Jets gangs?
That was more like what I would have been in if I were in a gang. No, this was like, I grew up in New York City. There were there were projects right next to our high school and we'd all be hanging out after school, and so you make friends with other people, and there were people in gangs and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
And so when you say you stole things, was this in conjunction with these sorts of gangs, or was it more in dramatic high school?
It was just like going to grocery stores and like stealing beer and steaks and then having barbecues because we didn't have any money.
Yeah. So it's not just for kicks. It's also, I am poor. And this is how we didn't get these things.
Exactly. Like if we wanted to, there was no like going out to eat or whatever. So if we wanted to, I don't know, eat steaks and drink a couple beers when you're in high school, which is not okay. You should not be doing that if you're in high school because that you're not old enough to do it.
Little PSA there.
I just wanted to make sure I got that out there.
Yeah.
You had to figure out a way to do it. Man, you're getting some secrets here. It's not stuff I tell people.
Yeah, I feel like I said, every single time I've met you, I always felt there's this depth behind you.
Hey, thanks.
Because nobody is that nice without being thoughtful about it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like, I think that the most interesting people are the ones that have been through some shit. And now, I mean, we're here in Los Angeles. You are a successful actor and social media star. You can afford beer and steaks now.
I can.
When you think back to yourself in high school, do you feel secure now?
I don't know that I'll ever feel secure financially. Like, I feel like no matter how much money I make, there's always a part of me that's like, what if it all goes away tomorrow?
Right. Like it's all built on sand.
Yeah. And I think that it comes from growing up with that sense of scarcity. On paper, I am financially secure.
Yeah.
And I believe I have set myself up for future success. Man, things have gotten so much better ever since I started meditating.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I've dealt with anxiety my whole life.
Same.
And I still deal with it to a certain extent, but it's so much more manageable now, which is so necessary because there's so much going on. And so being able to quiet down for 20 minutes a day just changed everything.
You've probably heard of the golden rule, right?
Yeah, of course.
Treat others as you would want to be treated.
Of course.
I remember the day, I think it was in like college or high school, when I realized, the golden rule actually breaks down for me because my mind works differently than other people. because I care about so many little things that I'm very anxious about how I'll be perceived
Right.
that other people don't, because I have always been thinking about how am I being perceived? Do they like me? Did I make them angry?
Right.
And so for myself, it's only been the past few years that I've also learned through therapy to try and just calm the nervous impulses down a little bit.
Yeah. Something that helped me do that also was realizing that everybody's just thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
We are all our own main characters. And most of the time when we are worried that other people are thinking about us, they are not. They are thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
And how, they think we are perceiving them. I think there's power in that awareness.
What about in between you in high school versus where you are today? What's the genre? What's the story there?
I mean, it's me graduating high school, knowing that I wasn't going to go to college or university, booking a job out here, a play called Dead End, which is a great way to move out to Los Angeles, doing a play called Dead End.
Really strong start.
Yeah, exactly. But that was actually an amazing experience. They relocated me out here. I got to make a bunch of friends who were in the play. I had a social life just kind of built in because of that. The play was a big deal. Everyone in LA who was in the industry saw it. So I got new agents out here and I decided to stay. And that's when my adult life started. And it was, very much up and down. And that it probably added to my anxiety quite a bit. And there's very little stability, but you keep doing it because you're like, well, I must be doing something right because I keep getting jobs. It's just like I cannot control how often I get the job. And so that's where social media starts to come into play. And I start thinking, okay, how can I set myself up in a way that provides a little bit more stability, gives me a little bit more something to bring to the table other than just being a good actor.
Yeah, you already found your passion. What do you think as a child actor and growing your teens made you more effective at landing these roles than the throngs of other kids who I'm sure would love to voice act in a Disney piece or to star with Robin Williams?
I wish there was some sort of straight answer for that, but obviously I think there's a lot of hard work and a lot of failure, so much failure that you have to be okay with. And I think that's sort of a superpower that people in a creative field need to have. But then beyond that, it's just not getting discouraged, not giving up, developing your relationships always, right? Keeping in touch with people that you work with is really important, just from a practical sense, because so much of my work has come from people that I've worked with before.
The part 2 on managing failure. So I took acting classes maybe a year ago.
Nice.
Because, I'm not seeking to go into industry.
But you're on camera. You wanna
If I'm being honest, there always was a little bit more of that creative side of myself where I always wanted to do these sorts of things. And I just remember, even just in a class, there's just extreme sense of oh, I hope I did a good job.
Yeah.
I hope the teacher thinks that I acted well. There's always this nervous impulse after doing a monologue to be was that good?
My acting teacher always used to say actors are braver than astronauts because it is an incredibly vulnerable thing. I mean, I don't know if I would, say that that's totally true.
Astronauts are brave too. Fair.
They're super brave.
Of course.
No shame.
We
to
love
the
you,
astronauts
America's astronauts.
Yeah. Thank you for your service, or I don't know what
discovering
we say.
the moon.
Good job. I think it's an incredibly vulnerable and scary thing to lay your heart out for people. Yeah, you're bearing your soul.
Yeah.
It's even in scenes that aren't super emotional. Even if it's just a awkward first date or something. There is something very vulnerable about showing in an authentic way what one feels in those moments.
What for that is your process when there's a scene and it's you need to be really angry at this person? What helps bring that out in you?
My old acting teacher, the late Anne Rattray, who was unbelievable and so amazing at what she did. She always taught us to feel emotions physically, right? It wasn't the sort of thing where it was oh, think of someone you're mad at, right? There was a little bit of that too. You could always picture someone you have very, strong, maybe angry feelings towards. More importantly than that, it was about where in your body do you feel these things. So if it's anger, it's like, do you feel it in your chest or in your shoulders because they get tight?
When you look back at your journey to this calling, to this mission, how do you think about life? Is it a series of serendipitous, coincidental events? Is it, was this meant to be? Like when you think about things from a philosophical perspective.
It's got to be a combination.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to be nature and nurture. I think there were circumstances that I was in that were perfect for getting to do what I do. I think also as a performer or as a comedian or a dancer, you're born with certain things that you can use. And then the nurture side of it is I had parents who taught me how to work hard.
Yeah. The discipline.
Yeah. And not everybody is lucky enough to have that. And I also grew up with that scarcity, and that probably also motivated me a great deal. So it's hard. It's probably a combination of a bunch of things, but the thing that I feel most lucky about is that for pretty much my whole life, I have known where I'm headed and what my direction is. And I've never had to spend too much time thinking about that. As I developed the craft of making short form content and continued to act in television and in film, you realize that there's so much crossover. There's so much one hand washing the other. And there is a reason why The Rock is the highest paid actor in the world.
Yeah.
And it's because he's got 400 million people in his pocket.
Social media.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think also as things have blown up, especially over the last 6 months, I'm noticing how different reality is all of a sudden when you are in a public space and people are, either saying nice things to you or they're like looking at you or they're taking a picture of you or whatever it is. And it's not happening like I'm not Tom Cruise or anything.
Yeah, but
it's happening
people
regularly
recognize
enough.
you.
Yeah.
My last question for you is, what's the dream now?
The dream is to get to do what I'm doing now for more and more people over time.
I love that.
I have big dreams that are, accomplishments or material in nature or whatever. But ultimately, if I get to keep doing what I'm doing for more and more people and continue to grow, I'll be a very happy person.
I love that.
Yeah.
Adam, thanks so much for making time.
Dude, thanks for having me.
How you feeling?
I feel great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got personal there.
Yeah, I did.